Well, during the war, many pilots took off on bombing missions, never to return. The United States alone lost 23,000 planes in combat. For the families left behind, there would always be a gnawing uncertainty. What happened? How did they die? One man who lost his father in the war went in search of answers. Mike Walter brings us his story of reconciliation and the strength of the human spirit.
This is the picture of a happy family. It's also a picture before the start of the Second World War. The little boy seen here is now a man. He shared the same name as his father, but little else. His dad went off to war and never came back.
Yeah, you always wonder what it would be like to have a father growing up.
Phil Torrey would wonder about a lot of things growing up. Among them, what happened to his father, whose plane crashed outside of Tokyo just before Phil turned 4 years old.
Because a lot of people who lost fathers in World War II don't know what ever happened to them. Primarily pilots who crashed in Europe or in the Navy crashed at sea, and their remains weren't found. And in many cases, the only way they knew that they were killed was they just didn't come back.
As the years passed, Phil followed in his father's footsteps, entering the military. And as luck would have it, he would eventually be stationed at Camp Fuji in Japan. That's where a man in his 80s, known only as Mr. Tashira, changed his life.
He was a funny little guy, kind of gruff and tough, kind of a little guy. But he was a very powerful person in their government, unbeknownst to me. And he was kind of a character. I mentioned, my father was killed right outside Tokyo. And God, he rose out of his chair like he was stone cold sober and said, "Tell me about it." And so I did.
What Phil Torrey never could have imagined was that Tashira wasn't just listening to his story, he had a plan. He wanted to take Phil to the village of Habu, where his father's life ended.
I was totally blown away with the fact that he wanted to introduce me to the people who found my father's body and buried him, which really I was not at all prepared for.
So he made the journey. Decades after the war ended, met the townspeople, and heard the stories of his father's final moments. The visit drew quite a crowd.
I couldn't see when walked into this building and all a gazillion flash bulbs went off. And I said, "Holy smokes, the place was packed." I expected 4 or 5 people. I didn't invite any press. I didn't want any press. And he invited them from all over the world, except for the American press.
And Phil got the answers he was looking for, and peace of mind.
His body was taken care of. They revered him as a warrior, not as the enemy.
Phil was grateful to the people of Habu.
I thought that they had put a lot of effort into making me feel comfortable. And then we sang Amazing Grace, and that finished me off. I was okay until that point. So today, when I hear Amazing Grace, it has a completely different meaning for me than it does for the rest of the audience.
Amazing Grace capped off an amazing day and journey, a journey that Phil Torrey will never forget. Mike Walter, CCTV.